The same scenario occurs when Joseph is called forward to help Pharaoh with his dreams. After being agitated during the night due to two disturbing dreams, he summoned his court magicians to discern what they meant. Again, no help could be found in interpreting them. The cupbearer then perked up, recalling Joseph's previous assistance, and told Pharaoh of the success he had had with Joseph while he was in prison. Quoting here the words of the cupbearer, "A young Hebrew was there with us, a servant of the captain of the guard," he told Pharaoh. "And when we told him, he interpreted our dreams to us, giving an interpretation to each man according to his dream. And as he interpreted to us, so it came to pass." Thereupon Pharaoh had Joseph summoned to the royal court, and he addressed Joseph with these words, "I have had a dream, and there is no one who can interpret it. And I have heard it said of you, that when you hear a dream, you can interpret it." To which Joseph then responds, quote, "It's not in me. God will give Pharaoh a favorable answer." The item to be noted here is Joseph's insistence that his own talents are of no value. God is the only one who can lay open what a dream means. Bearing these facts in mind, let's go back now and read, hopefully with better eyes, Joseph's first dream. Reading again from chapter 37. "Hear this dream which I have dreamed," Joseph said. "Behold, we were binding sheaves in the field, and lo, my sheaf arose and stood upright. And behold, your sheaves gathered round it and bowed down to my sheaf." What's striking about this scene is what is missing. Nowhere in this chapter is God invoked as the source of the dream's meaning. In fact, it's even worse than that. Nowhere in this text does Joseph provide any interpretation whatsoever. The only interpretation that we are privy to in this chapter are the words of the brothers. Quoting here, "Are you indeed to reign over us? Or are you indeed to have dominion over us?" Though I think it's safe to assume that Joseph's interpretation must have matched theirs, it's certainly significant that in this chapter Joseph says nothing. It makes this sequence the exact opposite of the other two dream sequences we just examined. In those cases, only Joseph can interpret, and only with the help of God. Here, only the brothers speak, and no mention is made of God. It simply can't be the case that their interpretation is going to be the correct one. What then might these dreams mean? A first key to that problem can be found in the writings of a great medieval Jewish commentator by the name of David Kimchi. He made the astute observation that the subject or theme of the dream is grain, the very means by which Joseph was going to rise to power. But indeed, there's even more here. The first time the brothers will see Joseph after he has been sold into slavery is when they come down to buy grain. As the story unfolds, we see the brothers come down with empty sacks, hoping that these sacks will be filled by the man that they meet. So let's try to imagine for a moment what this might look like. The brothers standing around Joseph with their empty sacks at their feet, while Joseph has an upright stack beside him, full, presumably overflowing with grain. And from that grain or upright sack he draws in order to fill the brothers' empty sacks. The picture, if we imagine it this way, fits almost exactly the details that Joseph has described in his dream. But the word here, almost, is quite important. For the emphasis in this scene, as I've described it, is a bit different than the emphasis we see in chapter 37. The point at issue is not so much the obeisance of the brothers' sheaves, but the overabundance of Joseph's sheaves, which he then proceeds to share with his brothers. If the dream is meant to be read this way, that is, the emphasis is not on power, what the brothers lack and what Joseph has, but rather the fact that the brothers have no grain that Joseph now is going to provide, then the dream looks quite different. And in fact, it's not very difficult to assimilate this interpretation with, in fact, what Joseph does in chapter 50. He refuses what John Milton called the knee tribute here of his brothers, because he realizes the dream isn't about power, but about service. He's been sent ahead to Egypt in order to interpret Pharaoh's dreams, to provide during these years of famine, not only for the Egyptians, but for his family. And now he takes the resources from his full and overflowing sack and fills the sacks of his brothers. Well, this creates really a quite startling result. When the first two dreams were presented, Joseph, his brothers, and we as well as readers rushed to fill in an interpretation that seemed so obvious it didn't even need to be argued. But an interpretation that we find over the course of the story was gravely wrong. We shared, as readers, the worry of the siblings that God's purpose in elevating Joseph could be reduced simply to power and domination. Let's recall what Levinson said about the difficulty of the theological doctrine of chosenness or election. He wrote, "The problematic of chosenness derives from the disparity between the frailty of the human ego and the mysterious operations of the choosing deity. Human nature is not constituted so as to facilitate the acceptance of chosenness. The one chosen is sorely tempted to interpret his special status as a mandate for domination. Such is the impression that Joseph's father, brothers, reasonably received from the little brother's insensitive report of his two dreams." And I might just add here, emphasizing what I've already said, that it's not simply the family that gets these dreams wrong, but we too as readers are pulled into this improper and incorrect reading. At the end of the tale, we see the mistake. The dream about the sheaves was not about power, but clearly about service. This point, however, is so counterintuitive that all the major players in this story, as well as we the readers, failed to notice. It seems it's not easy to learn that when God chooses someone, he calls them to serve others. Or, to quote the words of the great German theologian and martyr to the Nazis in the Second World War, Dietrich Bonhoeffer, who once said, "When God calls a man, he bids him come and die."